ready? All right, we are, Jay, we're recording now, okay?
That's fine. Is Tony there?
Yes, Tony is here.
And I'm leaving.
Great.
Emily is here.
Can we just put the red file piece there, please, for a minute, I guess?
Yes. Emily's here also?
Great.
Ed Kane is here? And yourself and Joe via Zoom.
Is Don Norton? Is Bob Norton there? Who doesn't know?
Oh, Rob Norton was going to call.
I saw, no, Rob Norton is not on at the moment.
No.
Okay. Are we required to have minutes for this meeting?
Sorry, say it again?
I would think so. Are we required to have minutes for this meeting? I would think so. Yeah, I would think so too. I mean, it would be very
We are.
general, of course, you know, as we talked about before. Okay, I have no ability to record this phone call as I am not at my home base. And we just need to take, I'll take some notes, but if somebody else want to take some notes, which you can share.
I can take some notes.
Someone volunteer right away, come on now. Before now we have a note,
I've done this before.
please. Who's that? Who's that?
Is anyone else having trouble hearing?
It's
now,
terrible.
I am too.
Okay, yeah.
Is it the mic? Is it?
Good. Thank you. Thank you, Ben. All right, so, let's begin, shall we? Can we do a roll call on your end? Bob, Kate?
Hold on, Jay, we're checking the microphone. It's a little scratchy on this end.
Okay.
You think it's any better on the computer?
It's going to be harder for them to hear you. It's probably the worst.
Is it? Okay.
Try passing it into this sound bar.
Can you? All right, let's give it a shot.
What are we gonna do?
All right, we just have some audio. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to try transferring your audio coming in to a different device. So, in the meantime, now, we'll go around the room. Representing Carfax, we have Tony, Emily, Ed Kane, Jay and Joe on the call. Representing the Township, Amy Lacey from our Finance Department. I don't think you guys have met her before. Auditors have.
Nope.
And myself. And our auditors are on the call from Zelenkowski, Axelrod. We have Debbie Bacon, Jeff Weiss, and Tim Mira. So I think we have all sides represented. And tonight's meeting is a review of the draft audited financial statements for year ended 12/31/2019. I'd like to kick it over to Ed to discuss.
Okay. Good afternoon. I had to look to see is it afternoon or evening. In hindsight, we should never have had a meeting today. The last thing I wanted to do was deal with accounting or tax on July 16th, but that's a whole different issue. We have been, as a committee, since inception, we have been tasked with handling what normally should be a responsibility directly of the Board of Commissioners. The Board of Commissioners, though, for a variety of reasons, decided they wanted an independent group to handle the audit committee functions that we would normally see in a for-profit organization and many NGOs. So we are tasked with that. This is our, I believe, 10th year that we have been doing this. We have the independent accounting firm on one side and the Board of Commissioners, and through them, the management of the township on the other side. Our job in the middle is to ensure that the audit goes smoothly, to deal with any issues that may come up, and to be as responsive as possible. Was that us, or is that something else?
That looks like another calling.
Okay.
I guess we all should be on mute,
Yeah.
unless you want to speak, right?
Yes, agreed.
Some people do the
Everybody should be
speakers
on
and
mute.
like an echo.
Yeah,
Everybody
please,
else,
that's important at this point. If you want to talk, raise your hand. And at one point, I will turn it over to the accounting firm, and they can make whatever comments they want. I've had to, just so upfront, I've had discussions with Tim. If there were any issues, any concerns that we need to be aware of, and I've been told the answer is no. And if Tim wants, or Debbie wants, or Jeff wants, what we can do, which is perfectly appropriate, we can excuse Mr. Tate and Amy, and we can have an independent discussion with the auditors on any issues they want to bring up without management present. And that is appropriate if somebody wants to do that.
Ed, can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
Whether they want to or not, I think when the time is right, when you want to have that discussion,
Okay.
we will step out.
That's fine. So what we finally have come down to, and obviously it's not when we originally wanted this. We wanted this to be about a month ago. And considering what we have lived through, and those of us on this call, yes, we have lived through this. We have a draft copy of the financial statements, including the independent auditor's report. The report does give a clean opinion. And to the best of my knowledge, and Tim, Debbie, and Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, there are no management letter comments this year. Am I right? Am I wrong?
That's correct, there are none.
Okay. And what most of you do not know, unless you went and looked at the history, effectively, we were in serious trouble as a township when this committee came into effect 10 years ago. If you read the management letter comments and the number of issues that had come up, to the credit of management, specifically Mr. Tate, now with Amy, and Bill White, who is now township manager and was finance director when this started. All the issues, all the concerns have been cleaned up and eliminated. So we have a clean opinion. You also have in front of you an 87-page draft of the financial statements, which we can go through today. The CAFA report is in process. We're expecting that the MDA, management discussion, part of it and analysis will be complete within about
3 days. Three to 4 days.
I was going to say 5 to 7 at the most. The intent is that that will be presented also to the Board of Commissioners for acceptance and approval. And that way then we can go again for the Award of Excellence.
And if I could, just to clarify, the GFOA, Government Finance Officers Association, the Award of Excellence is granted annually. Submissions are made by June 30th for the prior calendar year ending. Given the crisis we've been under, the pandemic, we were able to apply for an extension to July 31st. So our comprehensive annual financial report, which is the draft statements you have in front of you, will be complemented with a transmittal letter, the MD&A, and a statistical section at the back of the report. That is all in the process right now of being compiled and finalized. It just was not ready for tonight's meeting. That will be submitted by July 31st in advance of the board meeting. I think it's important to note that the board is presented the financial statements for purposes not to approve, not to debate, or any other reason other than to accept these statements as these are management statements prepared by management, audited by the independent CPA. So in the interest of full disclosure for the public and anyone else who is interested, that they know that the entire board has been made aware of the financial statements and the report. Part of the history that Ed referred to going back 10 years or more was where management was providing the audited statements to maybe one or two board members only, and many of the other members were not aware at that time of what was in the report. Our process is our best attempt at full disclosure all the way around, through the audit process, through what we're doing tonight with CARFAC as an outside independent body. Tony, thank you for the exhaustive review, the comments. This is all part of what we want to do so that the world knows this is fully public, fully transparent. There's nothing to hide. So although this will be uploaded to GFOA July 31st, it will be in advance of the board accepting these. But it's important to know that that process is just simply a full disclosure to the board. And again, for them to accept, not to approve the statements.
Just a quick question on the award of excellence. I've never heard of this before. What are the implications? What if you don't receive it?
If you don't receive it, it doesn't impact the township's financials, or it doesn't impact us in any way other than this is a mark of an achievement, an accomplishment that has a positive upside to Moody's, to any other lenders. There is a small, and our Tim or Jeff or Debbie, feel free to chime in. I know there's a small percentage of governing bodies throughout the country who actually apply for this award. I don't know specifically the percentage, but those that do.
It used to be the certificate of excellence used to have a significant bearing on like a bond rating or a loan rating and the interest rates you got. It's not as big anymore as it used to be related to that. The analysts they took it as better financial record if you did the CAPR. With the advent of pension issues and OPEB issues, they've kind of moved up in the realm of what the bond analysts and loan analysts look at in your financial statements, and it's kind of knocked the award of excellence down a little bit. They don't get quite as many bonus points, I guess, they to do it, and a reduction in your interest rate as you used to, but it still is something that the bond analysts give you credit for when you go out for loans and your interest rates and things like that. That was always the major impact behind it. And from the other perspective, it's a public relations thing also, in that it shows that your accounting department is doing a job, a higher level job than what most people do, and that you're providing a lot more information to the users. The statistical section and the introduction section that Bob talked about, that'll be there later, that actually goes a lot farther than what you'll see in the financial statements. It gives you 10 years worth of analysis of numbers. So it's just a financial document that a lot more people can use, and people can use it to do analysis on your financial statements and look back at what you've done. So I think that's good. And who makes that the determination that you get it? There is the Government Finance Officers Association is an association of government finance officers that you become a member of. They had a team at their that works for GFOA that does it, but they also have individual CPAs like myself. I'm not a reviewer, but we have, I think, 2 partners in our firm that are reviewers. So you'll have other CPAs who will review the document. There's actually about an 80-page document that you go through in reviewing the financial statements. And does it include XYZ? Does it include ABC? Does it not include certain things? And you can, me as a reviewer, for one of my partners that are reviewers, will go through that and then score it. And I believe there's 14 sections that it gets scored on, if I remember correctly, in the checklist. So somebody completes the checklist, but it gets reviewed by at least 2 other, what they consider to be experts. You have to go through a fairly arduous rendition to become a reviewer. You have to have been a CPA for 5 years, I can't remember exactly, and you have to provide copies of financial statements that you've done for them to review, just to be able to become a reviewer. So, I think I got it. It's kind of like a good housekeeping seal of approval. That's a good way to put it. How can we communicate this, assuming this is achieved from a township point of view? You mentioned this is good PR. I don't know what you do with your certificate. Most people put it on the website and things like that. So go ahead, Mike.
Okay, it actually ends up, I mean, there is a certificate/plaque here somewhere, but it ends up on the website itself, and there will be a splash that will be made about that. Having said it, most people are not going to read it, pay attention to it. It's more important potentially on a financing or refinancing. So it does help.
The township, I think, has done a great job in the past years of when we do receive the award, which typically takes about 6 months after submission. So unfortunately, it's, for a financial report that's dated 12/31/19, it's typically December of 2020 by the time the review process is complete and the award is given out. So sometime in December, management, the administration has always done a great job of putting it on the board's agenda, recognizing the board for supporting management's efforts, recognizing CARFAC for their role, and so there is some splash made there, and then posted to the website. Beyond that, I don't think there's, and it's posted publicly. So that's what's been done for the past 10 years, 8 years.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking here, in view of your prior comments, I don't know who made a comment about the 2 prior issues which were of concern that have been cleaned up. To what extent those were known, this is a good PR move to, indicate not only transparency, but really that, we're doing a top-level job. So, okay, I think I understand it. Thank you.
Okay.
I have a question. The MD&A is going to be a part of this audit document?
The MDA is part of the CAFRE, yes.
And do we have a responsibility to review that also?
To read
As a
it.
committee?
You will have an opportunity to review and read it. Yes, absolutely.
That was my question. Do we have a responsibility as regards that? Does the board expect us to read that and provide a level of due diligence or reviewing the MD&A?
I think that the board's charter for CARFAC can be interpreted that way.
Yes.
I think it, yeah, I would extend the charter to include that,
Okay.
yeah.
Process question, what's the extent to which we're signing to?
Sorry, Jay, come again?
What's the extent to which we're signing to? That we've read it, that we approve it at committee level, that we sign the document, we ask Carfax to sign the document, that we've seen it, that we've discussed it, what level are we signing to?
Carfax role is going through the review of the documents, reading it, so to the extent you're at the end of the process, Carfax role here is to hopefully reach a point where you're satisfied with the report and that you feel comfortable recommending to the board that they accept. There's nothing to sign off on. There's no approval. We're very careful to exclude the word approval because approval, as we were advised a while back, implies liability. And neither Carfax nor the
Right.
Board of Commissioners has any liability for the statements. It's entirely management. So,
Okay, so this is based on good faith efforts, correct?
say it again. I'm sorry. Let's have a
This
little.
is based on good faith effort, right?
Good faith efforts.
Yeah.
Good faith effort. is
Yeah.
what we're expecting.
Yeah, it's a good faith effort. We rely on the, well, we all rely on the audit opinion. I mean, I think that's probably the prevailing document, if you will, that the auditors have done their work and have issued an unqualified opinion. I think that's probably of utmost importance, and that's ultimately what is, if it were not unqualified, there would be other things and more things to be looking into and questioning.
Okay, thank you.
What I would like to do is, Tony, you went through exhaustively with reading the financials, and I thank you for that. Are there, and I know that Bob responded back, because I think we all got a copy of that. Are there still open items that you want to discuss? Because we do have an opportunity, if it's appropriate, to make changes to the financial statements.
There's a handful of questions that have not yet been answered. I would say none of them are showstoppers, in my opinion. And I'm not sure it's useful to take up everybody's time. I certainly would like to discuss it with Bob and kind of see where we come out on some of this stuff. I have other questions about kind of the whole genesis of why the document looks like it looks. The last section where we've got a vast section that deals with this year's performance against budgets. And I wasn't sure why that was a part of a set of audited financial statements. I understand the auditors don't opine on that part, but it's like, why is this included here? Not that it's not important to the commissioners, because it ought to be, but that's, at the end of the year, the township financial guys give them a report and says, here's the budget, here's how we did this year, here's how we did last year, here's the comparisons, here's the differences, kind of the story. Why it's in the audit documents is, in terms of form, is just beyond me.
Jeff or Tim or one of you guys, did you hear all of Tony's question? Why we have budget versus actual information in the document, in the audited statements? I'm sure it's something you guys can probably, I'm sure you can point to an auditing requirement or reporting requirement.
It's required, governmental accounting standards requires you to put budget to actual statements for the general fund and all major special revenue funds in what's called required supplementary information. So those are required to be there. no matter what year or when it is, you must show budget actual reports for the general fund and your major special revenue funds. The other budget actual statements that are in the back for all the other funds, or for any other non-major funds, that's actually a requirement of the Certificate of Excellence program to have those in there. So, hopefully he answers the question as to why they're there.
There's certain parts of dealing with a nonprofit. It is not the same as dealing with a for-profit. So there's certain requirements that have to be, that are different. And it's a matter of, it's part of their job. I'm pointing at all of you guys. It's part of our job as a committee, part of management's job, to make sure that information is in there and that we comply with the standards that we need to, we, the township, in issuing this financial statement, comply with the standards that are required. So that ultimately, when it does go public, and it will be on the website, it'll be available for anybody to pull down, to read, and you know, and the auditors have satisfied themselves that it is correct, it follows all the requirements.
They don't issue an opinion on that. They don't issue an opinion.
If it's
on
part of
those
it,
numbers
it
being
is part of their opinion, they are issuing that, unless it's specifically they're disclaiming.
I must have misread their opinion then.
Yes.
No, I thought they said that the last 10 pages, you know, we looked at it, but we don't express an opinion on it, which is fine.
Jeff, is that correct? The other supplementary information is required as Certificate of Excellence, so it's not something you have to express an opinion on.
There's a couple different issues. I don't know exactly which page. He's talking about the last 10 pages. Then he's talking about, so if you're talking about the budget actual or the 10 pages in last year's report, which would be statistical section, which I don't even, you haven't had the statistical section yet, correct?
No, statistical has not been circulated, so, Tony, you mean the last 10 pages of the... I'm sorry?
We are talking about the budget actual. We issue an in-relation to opinion on budget actual statements. So, actually, for other supplementary information, required supplementary information, we don't issue any sort of an opinion.
Right.
It's kind of a weird thing in governmental financial statements. So it's an in relation to opinion, which means those reports are materially correct in relation to the financial statements presented up front. There are sections of the report when you read our opinion right now that references, I'm just going to make sure I have this, the introductory and statistical section is actually the last paragraph in the opinion. We do not express any opinion or anything on the introductory and statistical sections, which you are not in this document that you're looking at yet. But what we have to do with those is we have to make sure that there's nothing, anything that's in a financial statement, we have a requirement that we look at. We have to ensure that there's nothing in those statistical statements that is incorrect in relation to our financial statements. And that actually goes back to prior years. So you can't put in the financial statements that you had $100 million in cash on hand, or in the statistical section, we had $100 million in cash on hand when you really only had $1 million. So we have to review those. We don't do an opinion on them, but we have to make sure that there's nothing in them that is in conflict with the financial statement.
Spent more time
Don't know
on
if
this
that helps or not.
and it's worth it.
In the old
It
days,
says right here that we
in the old
we don't
days,
express any opinion on the stuff at the end.
in the old days, we would refer to it partly as a tick and flick. What it really means is that we make sure it ties back, and that that would be their job. And when I was doing all that, and that it would tie back, and it would make reasonable sense. but it's not the same as doing a full audit
Understood.
on the rest of the financials.
Yeah, once again, a lot of the financial things we do, for other clients, you don't have those things in the report. If they don't enter it into the GFOA for the certificate of excellence, you don't have to provide those, but it is a requirement for the certificate. If they're not in there, you will not get the certificate, so.
Are there other questions specifically that we can go through?
I have one.
Go.
So I note, I think it was 16, and you made reference to the current pandemic issues that have affected businesses and salaries and that sort of thing. And I was wondering if it mightn't be helpful to specifically include at least a line or two referring to how the assumptions that are used to come up with the calculations that we use to evaluate the pension fund obligations and whether, you know, that there's a healthy state of being in that sector, because the assumptions are based on prior years, and the commissioners are going to use, I would imagine, this report when crafting their budget, which is going to include projections about how much the township is going to need to contribute to ensure the health of the pension fund and to allow it to be able to meet its ongoing obligations. You know, especially since I think there was a note in here that said that you're recording liabilities only as they are paid. Is that right?
Yeah.
Not on modified accrual.
Right, so there is information about how there is a liability that is, you know, accruing, but I think that they're only focusing, at least, you know, in the one section on the payments as they're, or the costs as they're recognized. So even though, go ahead.
Modified accrual basis of accounting, which are your fund level statements, you don't include long-term assets or long-term liabilities in those financial statements. They're shown at the entity-wide level. So when you're looking at your financial statements, you actually have really two different sets of accounting rules for two different sets of financial statements.
Right, I understand that. I'm just saying that if you're going to discuss it and include it, even though that's not necessarily something that you're expressing an opinion on, it may be worthwhile just to make a notation. I don't think anybody in this room or on the Board of Commissioners is going to forget about the pandemic between now and when they craft a budget, but if you're going to mention it with respect to possible tax revenues and, you know, whatever else it says in note 16.
On note 16, I'm sorry.
Which is on page, what is it,
55?
55, right. So let me just scroll down to that so that I'm not just talking off the top of my head. So page 55.
So I guess I'm trying to figure out, are you looking for us to add something into that related to the retirement investments?
Just noting that the assumptions that are made regarding the rate of return on investments and possibly, you know, the actuarial tables that come into consideration when you're trying to figure out how long somebody's going to live, and in that case, what kind of what they're going to cost in terms of what their healthcare costs are, how much of the pension they're gonna draw down on. If you could just put a note in on that, because it's just as important, it has just as important an effect on the pension fund as it does on, state and tax revenues, the possibility that grants will be reduced, and, temporary closure of businesses. And like I said, I understand that examining the health of the pension fund is not the point of this, but if you are going to mention those other things, because the pension fund is a huge part of, of these statements, you at least just want to say that we're paying attention to it, and that all of the actuarial assumptions may turn out to be completely wrong.
We can look at something about that, putting something in about that, that's not an issue.
Okay, thanks.
But you can't forecast anything, you can just give a warning, or a potential warning, no problem.
Yeah, I just remember back in the early aughts when the public pension funds all went to crap, and
And they still are.
right. So we want to show that we're paying attention to that, even though, like I said, it's not the focus of this particular audit.
No problem. If you can write a note, so, can write a note to talk to me about that, talk to me and Debbie about that, so.
All right, thanks.
But,
And Bobby,
And by the way, if
you related the question, wasn't the question related in part to COVID? And as you mentioned, that had an impact on this whole, on the healthcare costs that might impact pensions, the pension fund, was that a line of connection here? That because of course, the biggest drivers of your pension costs are whatever your investments have earned for the year and what their ending balance is at the end of the year. So, it can have a drastic impact on what your minimum missile obligation is to it for the year. So, and then there could be other impacts down in the future, depending on death rate, mortality rate, and how it affects the tables and things like that. So, I mean, there is potential impact on many scenarios related to the retirement plan, what the healthcare costs are going to go like after this occurs. So, there are multitude of things that could change. Right, no, listen, I understand. But is there any logic to reference, the potential impact of COVID as a something to pay attention to, or something, you don't know, right? We don't know at this point. And that's why that footnote, that's why we add that footnote in. We've recommended to all our clients to add something into the footnote. Just anytime you have something unforeseen, you want to disclose it in the financial statement, even if you don't know what the impact is. Okay. So that's why that disclosure is there, the subsequent event footnote. We recommended this township that they added it, Bob added it. We'll look at potentially recommending that they add something in relation to their retirement. That's why that's in there. It has no effect on your financial statements this year. We haven't written anything down. We haven't changed any numbers for 12/31/19 because of COVID. But it's just a disclosure to kind of make the readers aware of it. If they aren't aware of it, I don't know where they've been living under a rock since that 4 months, but it just brings it out. We're CPAs and we gotta cover our, what, and that's what they tell us we gotta do. That's what they tell us that we need to recommend to our clients to do. So.
We include emphasis in that paragraph in our opinion to point out that assumptions have given significance of the COVID and possible impacts that it'll have on the township.
Okay, good. I think that's a relevant issue to highlight when we send this forward, that this has been taken into consideration in a reasonable way at this juncture. Something like that. You can't fully predict it, but you're certainly, you're highlighting the issue so people can pay attention to it.
Tony, were you raising your hand?
Yeah, I had again, I don't know what good form is on this, but that, I think Emily bringing our attention to the subsequent events paragraph is important. The last sentence, we say overall decreased funding could result in the township having to curtail or eliminate some services and or raise taxes. It doesn't say that.
Yeah, you guys are bringing up a great point, and I think it's a little bit of a slippery slope. I think we want to be careful in how we word things because, I mean, to Emily's point, and Jeff, you nailed it, that the health of the pension fund is primarily driven by the investment income and the township's ability to continue to fund the MMO. Decreased revenues could cause a little bit difficulty in meeting the MMO funding. That's true, but decreased revenues in terms of grants and fees and business taxes ultimately could always be offset by increases in real estate taxes. And I think for a public document, I would prefer to shy away from talking about those obvious things that the board always has the power to do. I mean, that's kind of the last straw with the board, is when everything else goes down the tubes. The one thing they always have at their discretion is to raise taxes. So I think that's something that maybe we soften the wording up a little bit in the subsequent events, and just maybe talk about having to, manage our budget and, effectively evaluate the level of services rather than discuss, plant some seed out there that we're going to raise taxes or suggest that the board may consider raising taxes. That's done outside of this document. I think a reference to the pandemic is good, but going into and trying to opine on any action the board may or may not take, I think is a little slippery slope. That's not our job, is to do that. Go ahead, Jay, I'm sorry. Well, I'm sorry, I don't feel that's our job.
So, in other words, what you're saying is we don't want to suggest strategic directions for the board. We're outlining the way things are, and that strategic directions at the board level, not ours.
That's correct.
Right?
That's correct. I think the statements are what they are. The notes are, the narrative around the numbers, if you will. And I think I understand, Jeff, it's in there to cover the CYA portion, but I think we have to kind of keep it. We have to keep it devoid of any recommendations or recommended actions. I think it has to be more just a statement of facts of, what we're facing and, what a potential impact could be. But I feel personally, as management statements, I would not feel comfortable putting into a footnote anything that suggests a recommended course of action by the board. I believe that's better suited for budget time. I think it's a slippery slope.
I think it's important to remember these are 12, 19 statements, so everything is pre-COVID, so that we really can't talk too much about what's happening now. It's really about what had happened. And,
Is this Rob?
you shouldn't talk about raising taxes or that kind of stuff.
Who is that?
Rob, that's you, correct? Rob?
Correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry. I apologize. Just your number came up, but not your name.
Are you taking notes, Rob?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So why don't we'll outside of this meeting we can reconnect on the note and maybe circulate some revision or something that might be again. I think it's important that just for, and I'm going on past experience, you know how the board has reacted when Carfax is,
The moment we start getting into, that we're telling them what to do for the future, and we get very specific about it, you're gonna see a very different tone out of the commissioners. So, and specifically with the audit, we're looking at it, and it's the results for the year that ended back in 19. And the subsequent event footnote is to gingerly explain there may be something out there. This year, all the subsequent event footnotes that I have seen or been involved in are all stating the virus is out there, it may cause issues with revenue, it may cause, depending on the company or the NGO, it may cause issues with expenditures. So, but, you know, it's just, we're letting the world know that management is aware of it. In this case, the Board of Commissioners are aware of it. Jeff, Debbie, Tim, do you have any other comments about that?
No, I agree with
I think
that.
we're good.
I have a different question.
yes.
Sure.
So I'm looking through the balances on page 8, and then in some of the other pages that talk about expenditures. In the category of other, is it the done thing not to try to specify, or is it because everything is sort of, there are too many de minimis expenses and you don't want to try to detail all of them? And the reason that I ask is also that up under expenditures for current and protection to persons and property, is that police?
You're right in the middle of the page?
Yes. Here.
Okay. Protection to persons and property includes the police, primarily police, and our community development departments. So those departments who service the public from the policing standpoint, from the inspection and licensing standpoint, those who are out in the public and most directly involved with property owners, the businesses, that's protection of persons and property.
Okay.
It is primarily police, I will say, but it also includes our community development inspectors.
Right, and the reason that I ask is that another item that's in the news, I think that everybody's seen, is the nationwide discussion about police funding. And I was wondering if it would be a nice or a good idea to maybe break out at least a couple of categories, you know, in the interest of transparency. What portion of that, what is it, $12,077,000 is budgeted towards, you know, police hours? You know, was there a large purchase of, you know, some sort of equipment? Just because people are paying closer attention to how police departments are funded and what those departments are doing with the funds, and just to show that we're not folding all kinds of expenses into one general line item, would it be a good idea to break those out even just a little bit?
I think, and Tim or Jeff, correct me if, or Debbie, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the format is as prescribed under the GASBs, and what Emily's suggesting might be better suited in some form of a footnote which is maybe we can do a better job of giving some kind of a narrative around a particular item.
And I think that,
372 breaks it out, so you know. 372 has a broken out part of it.
Yeah. It's a detailed, general fund, look at the actual schedule. In the other side.
Page 72. Jeff, thank you.
okay.
No problem.
Okay, calm down, police protection, fire protection.
That breaks between the three departments that are included in that big lump $12 million number. The
Oh.
police, this would be like $9 million.
The fire protection number represents the money the township gives to the respective fire departments and service organizations. So they're not township employees. That's a line item in the budget where we give money to our respective fire departments. So, but the other two are exactly police department and community development.
Right, and I think that's a lot of the big debate right now is that, activists are pushing for, defunding of actual peace officers in the police departments and rechanneling the money into more community development. So it would be helpful, and even protective of the police if perhaps there were a footnote that says, X percent of this $9 million amount actually goes to police salaries or paying for, outdated equipment or updated equipment, that sort of thing. Just because anybody who's sensitive to that issue, who looks at a $9 million number and compares it to a $1 million number, you might think like, well, why is this all going here?
Let me ask a question. What has been the precedent here? First of all, I assume this reporting format has been the same in prior years, right? In terms of breaking out, like page 72, which you referenced, has been similarly.
It's been similar, yes.
Right. So this is consistent with precedent. I assume if there are questions on the budget, they can always be raised. They can be raised in the discussion with commissioners, etc., and one can address the detail. So the detail is available upon, if anybody wants to know, I assume. So I'm not sure if it's our job to highlight a particular area based upon what might be a current state of sensitivity of a particular topic. Because once we open that up, you can ask the question, how far do you go, or how far should you go? Is this our role? I think this is a dangerous, and this would be a concerning precedent for me, unless, like I said, if this wasn't already, previously addressed as you have already said it is.
I hear what you're saying, and I don't think that we need to have a full accounting of everything that goes on. But I do think that just because the standard is that we just lump it in police protection, doesn't mean that our township couldn't do it a little bit better and to be more sensitive to citizens and to say that here is...
Recognize these are 2019 numbers we're talking about, first of all. So you are not looking forward here in that context. So I don't know. I think I would personally stay away from it.
Well, I think that if we're going to make, I say we, but I mean if the report is going to make mention of, current events and how they may affect numbers going forward, it isn't worthless to know, at least generally, what the breakdown is for police. Why is it $9 million? If it's mostly salaries, like that's something that would be of interest to the community, and useful to the community and also to the board in crafting policy and budgets going forward. And, it's just a thought. I hear from comments around the room that it's not a very popular one, but That was my idea.
So, I don't know that, I don't think it's not popular, I just think it's not necessarily appropriate for these documents, right? We're really, that's starting to move into the policy area as opposed to reporting what the numbers are. I think that's a separate area, and that's not really part of our charter, so to speak. That's my opinion. I'm not opining on whether they're popular or not, I'm just opining on whether or not they're appropriate in this document.
Ed has commented here, that, go ahead, Jay.
Jay, Emily, I agree that given the current political sensitivity to all this, that's a really good insight. However, I'm also of the opinion that if you create a button, someone's going to push it. Just how it is. And if it became at some point, I would expect that the board would have to entertain this whole notion of how the police are funded, and they would really want to see a detailed assessment of that. And as we get in, and if decisions are made, then in the next report for the following year, describing the variance of actual versus budget versus projected for police, then that would be an appropriate outline. But I really do think that we're going to, my opinion, we're creating an issue before there is one. Because it is 2019, although you're right, I agree that it would have the appearance of addressing public interest, but I don't think that's what we're supposed to do here. You know?
Oh,
I mean,
like I said, I
see it's absolutely legitimate, but is that our job?
Well,
I think
if it's-
that's another
Let me
discussion
express
we could
it.
have, perhaps. I could imagine that there are certain strategic issues, perhaps like this, if this translates into a budget issue, if this translates into income issues for the township, if this translates into, manpower, if it's really strategic, I mean, I could imagine we could have such a discussion and perhaps provide a thought to the board. They might ask us to do that, hypothetically, or they could ask us to do something like that. I don't see us just being here reactionary per se. I think we need to think ahead, but I do think this is an issue perhaps for the next budget or the next discussion rather than this one. At least that's my sense. And we do need to get this moved forward and get this approved here in any case. We could spend a lot of time on this topic, I suspect.
Tony?
Good point, Joe.
Just, I mean, from 40,000 feet, my view is, I hope we're not being asked to find math mistakes and make sure the grammar's right in this. I mean, I hope that's not what our job is, because if that's the case, you got a whole lot of talent here that you're wasting our time, frankly. So, to me, and I'm not sure where I came out with your comment, Emily, but to me, that's the kind of stuff that we ought to be coming forth with, kind of, what's good disclosure here? In today's world, what's good disclosure? What's information I have in here? And I think we can add value by bringing up suggestions, whether we accept them or not, whether we accept them or not relevant to me. I mean, not important, but let's get those things out. What's good disclosure? What's good information? What's helping the board know about the business, be comfortable, and when the public sees this, what's going to help them be comfortable? But ticking and flicking and finding math errors and grammatical errors, I think it's kind of all we're doing here. And,
Oh, no, that was just kind of a preliminary step. What you had completed and all those comments is exactly, and what we're doing now, and Emily's comments, this is exactly what I think this process is supposed to be about, so that we do put forth the best possible document. I agree, you're doing a lot more than ticking and flicking, and this is great. And I think Emily's got a great comment. Whether or not it's appropriate in this document, that's something we can all discuss and debate the appropriateness. My concern is if you highlight one little line item and make a footnote out of it, then what's the waterfall? What's next? What are we going to drill into next? Where I think in reverse, if we say when the budget time rolls around, That's when we look at everything. There have been in the past couple of years, there have been many budget meetings held with the board, with the public, with the business associations. There was an opportunity to get the budget out there, and really, that would be the time we'd say, okay, we have X number of police officers, we have this many squads, we have this many motorcycles, this many police dogs. We're going to be doing this type of policing. This is how that's where the story of the police department ties back to the numbers in the budget process. And then that gives the board the opportunity to make a determination, how much do we want to fund? Do we want to continue this level of service? Do we want to cut it back? Do we want to increase it? But in the budget process is where a lot more of that is hammered out. And there's so I think this group, our CARFAC group, will have a lot more in the coming months to dive into and really help craft the budget and the budget message, if you will.
What is that?
Yeah,
I'm
Emma,
sorry?
I think your comments
Wait a
are
second.
appropriate, but again, not for the financial statements. It is appropriate for if CARFAC is asked to get involved in the budget process to delve into that. The finance department does an excellent job of pulling all that together, and it becomes very transparent. So it's one of the things that's very good about management in the township. Everything is available and is transparent to the stakeholders. And in this case, most of that, I would think, are that subgroup in stakeholders would be the residents. More secondarily, I think, with people who have businesses here in the township.
Okay, my other thing is that I deal mostly with fiduciary accounts, and they do drill down into things like that. So my thought was that the purpose of this document was to show the community, this is what we spent your money on. So I understand that if you start picking apart at one item, then you got to start picking apart at the other ones. That's why I thought maybe just putting in a note, with some general categories, and maybe that's something that might be helpful to people going forward. I don't want to hold up this document based on what would only be, maybe like a 3-line note. So I appreciate everybody's thoughts, and
I hope when the MD&A comes out, when I finish that, between the MD&A and transmittal, there's an opportunity to incorporate into that narrative more detail around the numbers. So hopefully when that comes out, that may answer some of what you're raising here without looking like we're just highlighting one particular department or division or something like that. We could, the MD&A, I think, I'm still working through it. It's exhaustive, and it's going to, I'll have it available once it's done. I'll disseminate it to you guys to review.
I'm satisfied with that, if everyone else is.
When's the 2021 budget cycle start?
Probably by Labor Day, we're running. We're in full swing.
Did CARFAC do anything for the 2020 budget?
I'm sorry?
Did CARFAC provide any input or anything to the 2020 budget?
No, we didn't really. No, there was no.
Okay.
Nor for 2019, I don't believe. I think by that time, there was limited involvement at that point.
I mean, I will tell you, one thing I'm aware of is public relations with the police. One of the things they're looking at in Radnor for this summer was providing ice cream to different communities within the township. So, it's a little bit different here than it is in what I call the pure urban areas. I'm not saying it's right, I'm just saying it's different. any other
Very
questions?
well.
Okay, so what we do is we need a resolution to then take this after the adjustments are made and to then recommend to the Board of Commissioners that they accept the financial statements as presented. And the wording of this is very specific. This 10 years ago, we went through this with the attorneys so that it is a CYA, and I like that phrase. I think, Jeff, you used it. Thank you. For us, very specifically, and Debbie's laughing also. Thank you, Debbie. But it's designed to protect this committee. And at the moment, that's what I'm concerned about. Because as members of it, we are doing a function, in a sense, the Board of Commissioners should be doing it. And I'm editorializing on that, but Bob knows how I feel about it. But they have delegated it to us. So what we're doing is recommending that the Board of Commissioners accept the audited financial statements for the year ended, what's our fiscal year ended? 2019. And to a large extent, that's it.
Do we want to do that now, or are we gonna, do we see an amended one, or we're just agreeing that the changes that Tony highlighted in his spreadsheet, they'll be made? And
Well, we're gonna go through that, and that's part of what I've done over the years. In the past, I would sit with Bill, sit with Bob, and we would finalize on all that. So in this case, it's sitting with you all and working with the auditors to make sure it's done. As accountants, we get anal on certain things, so it's to make sure it is correct.
okay, but I guess my
Could
question
we-
is, did you want the resolution now, or do we want to?
Well, Carfax, can I make a suggestion that if Carfax is inclined to, your motion here is recommending that the board accept the financial statements, subject to the addressing the comments and questions raised by the review, and subject to the finalizing the MD&A transmittal.
And subject to talking to the auditors independently of financial management.
Well,
Well-
we're gonna do that before.
Well, I want that to occur now. Amy and I will step out and you can speak to the auditors. So the board will get the resolution on August 10th, and it will be that they accept the financials. The motion, if you're inclined tonight to do so, would be that you recommend the board accept, subject to addressing these comments and completion of the MD&A and the transmittals.
I mean, my personal bias would be, let's wait till everything's done. We see the MD&A, we see the changes that are made. And if we do it in a telephone call, we'll do it in a telephone call.
Jay, can you hear?
Oh, I'm sorry. Jen, my suggestion would be to wait until we see the MD&A, till we see really basically the final document, have a telephone call for 2 minutes, and get a unanimous consent that the board, or the Carfax accepts the results. Otherwise, I mean, there's like, you could drive a truck through where we don't know about yet.
And I mean, yeah, you could, we don't. So it's up to whatever the committee wants to do. I don't care.
So we might not even have to do it by phone. We could just do it on paper/email. Like if we're happy with the draft, then somebody makes the motion and everybody signs a resolution. Like
Actually,
a resolution in lieu of.
There's nothing to sign, it's
Yeah,
just,
there is
it's
nothing
recorded.
to sign at all.
It may have to be in a public meeting because we'll have to have minutes that to make a motion and have it,
Oh, right.
but we could do it by Zoom if need be. You know, or whoever wants to come in is welcome again.
I think we should definitely be have the MD, the management discussion to review before we approve it. I can't see how we can do it without having at least eyeballs on that.
Okay. Yeah, sure, I agree. That's, it's fair that we get more of this out there in advance. You wanna have it?
Well, we can be sensitive to the timing of it. I think it's gonna work definitely up against it, but I think we can definitely, turn it around really quickly once we have that and schedule another call and go from there. So
Okay.
I think we'll be sensitive to timing, but I think we really need to see that.
Yeah, we're gonna be pushing on all cylinders, so, yeah, we're up against the deadline.
You have nothing to do this weekend.
No,
Hey, Bob, it's Jeff. Bob,
yeah,
one complaint with the timing, I would say when you send up the MD&A, you probably want to send it out to your group. Now, we may have some changes or comments to it, which you'll then be able to send the emails, but because of the timing, I don't think you can wait for us to review it and give you comments back before they have to review it. I mean, it takes us some time to review the introduction, the MD&A, and the statistical files and numbers back and forth. We can't turn it around in a couple hours. It takes us some time, so.
oh, I know, yeah,
My recommendation is you send it to us and to the clerk back at the same time.
okay, will do.
Okay, and with that, if I can ask for you two to please be excused.
Sure.
Don't go far. Because I'm not turning off the equipment.
Tony, you want to move over?
We'll be right out there.
And I thought you walked left because I can't see you, so I just figured you
No, I'm here on the side, somewhere.
There you are.
Okay, I'm here. Hey, there's only so much we can do with technology unless we're gonna wanna spend more money. And frankly, I would tell you, no, don't spend it. It's much better downstairs.
For some of us, you would need Photoshop to help.
Yeah. So having said it, I'm gonna turn it over to Jeff, Deborah, and Tim. Are there any comments that you care to make about the audit process? Any concerns, issues that you want to bring before this group?
From my perspective, doing management engagement, no, nothing's really come to our attention, nothing has come to our attention throughout the audit process. That is, more in nature, more included in the management letter, even given the events of, COVID, we worked with management pretty seamlessly through the process, has been great, and, working with him to get where we are now.
And I just wanted to say that considering the difficult situation that the township was in with staffing, et cetera, it's really great that we're at this point. They really buckled down for us and got us that we needed in a timely manner. And it's under the guidance of Bob and Bill, but primarily Bob. So I'm pleased with the fact that we are where we are, considering the difficulties of the situation we're all in.
Jeff, anything you want to add?
No, I can double up and triple up what Tim and Deb said. It has been interesting in all of our clients. We've had some get them out a couple days late. We've had one couple get out on time by June 30th, but we've had a bunch in counties that are always, some of our counties that they were always May, get them out in May. We even had them extend. So the township having to extend the GFOA submission is in no way a reflection upon them during this time period. Actually, I believe, Tim, tell me if I'm wrong, I think the major holdup was actually the actuary.
We did the
Third-party analysis.
we didn't get that till last week of June anyway, so.
Yeah, we just had the OPEB 75 report right in at the end, so I looked at it. 75. So the actuaries who have to do their work before us, we found have been more delayed than us. And I don't know exactly why, I can't explain that, but the actuaries have been very delayed in getting their reports done this year.
It's terrible.
I would think that a lot of their work they could do remotely without an issue, but they think have problems, so.
I mean, it's gonna, that will,
Just one final, sorry,
no, go ahead.
one final question. Yeah, you've done this audit how many times for the township?
Who, me?
Okay, right. And early on, there was a comment made that, I don't know who made it, but I just wrote it down, or something about there were a number of key prior issues that were cleaned up in this audit. Can you briefly reflect top line what those key areas were, and that you got, you know, full cooperation and transparency in addressing those and quote cleaning them up? I'm not looking for a protracted discussion here, other than just get your sense that I'm trying to understand how, you know, how that was handled and you know, given that you quote cleaned this up. And it may be a minor issue, I don't know what it is, but just a brief comment if you know.
From my perspective, I know we brought on the township, a lot of the issues that were mentioned, I think we're limited down to 2 or 3 comments. So when we came in, I think it was in the city, and then I think the township implementing limits within the last couple of years and having a separate system to track their capital assets. That's in the last comment, I guess we'll say, way. But when we came out of the account, a lot of the initial issues that were being discussed had been with the, I don't change management with Bob and Bill coming in. I think they did a lot to steer the township in the right direction.
I mean, if the committee wants, we can get to the committee, and there's no issue with that, what the comments were like at the beginning, and you, if you want to see it year by year by year, you can see the job that that management did to get these cleaned up. Because frankly, we were pushing them to get this cleaned up. My own opinion is, if I was the accounting firm that first year, I would have qualified the opinion. That's how severe the comments were. But it was, they were working at it diligently night and day to get these issues resolved. And the accounting firm ultimately said, okay, and could issue a unqualified opinion. I wouldn't have done it, but I may be more conservative on that than most. There were over 30 comments, if I remember correctly, and some of them were quite significant, but it's just not there anymore. I mean, part of the job of the accounting firm, and Jeff, Deborah, Tim, you can chime in on this, is to look at controls and look at how, are there issues, are there weaknesses, and then also in the controls, if something comes up, how is it resolved and how is it handled and how do they determine that there is an issue?
Sorry, I'm muted, but yes, I agree with you on every comment. Sorry, I was muted and trying to talk, and I wasn't being heard. But yes, I would agree with you on those issues. You know, we look at internal controls as part of it. We have to document what the narratives are. And your internal controls do change slightly anytime put a new system in, so we kind of have to redo all those with units coming in 2 years ago, I believe, right, Tim? Yeah.
Yeah.
So that did improve units, and the ERP system, the enterprise system, gives you the ability that you didn't have in the prior accounting system to handle capital assets and things like that
Right.
were probably, I think, the last issue that you dealt with. In your opinion, all this has been addressed effectively, and you are fully confident in your unqualified opinion.
That is correct.
So, I'm gonna have to step off this call. This is Jay. I'm gonna have to step off this call just for note. I'll forward minutes, to our committee. Everybody, thank you. And I'm sorry I have to leave early, but I think the rest of the team can handle it from here. Yeah. Well, I think we're done there, I think, as far as that, so.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
can
just gotta sign
may
off.
I-
So thanks, Paul.
is the
Okay.
committee all right with me bringing Bob back in?
See you,
I
Jay.
have a couple of questions.
Go ahead.
Did Sarbanes-Oxley have any impact on government reporting, these kinds of audited statements?
Not particularly, no.
No, okay, so the emphasis on internal controls and whatnot is not driven by anything other than what you folks think is appropriate.
It's driven by
Is that
good
fair?
accounting.
Emphasis on internal controls is standards and government audit standards.
Yep.
And second question, is there any concept of Bill White and Bob Tate sending a letter to to you guys or the commissioners that they don't know anything? I mean, everything they know is disclosed here. They don't know anything that's wrong.
You're talking a management rep letter?
Does that exist? Does that happen?
Yeah, they're required to sign, management is required to represent to us on numerous items before we issue the report.
Okay.
That is the same, whether it's for-profit or non-profit, NGOs or not-for-profit. Any other concerns? Let me bring Bob in and tell him he no longer has a job.
You can probably look at it.
I'm laughing. See, you can't tell when people laugh when they wear the face mask.
That's been the toughest thing over the past couple, it's been the toughest thing over the past couple of months.
That's right.
First off, just recognize the people with the face masks on.
Hey, Bob, we decided you need to pack up and leave.
Pardon me?
See, I knew that would get him.
I need to pack up and leave? Is that what you said? Does that mean right now? Am I getting my box too? Like I gotta. You know, this guy.
Who is it?
I've known this guy. You I'm talking about.
Oh.
Amy's. Okay. All right, good. You got your.
Is it possible we can get to the committee copies of the management letters? And I know there was an analysis we did about, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, where there was a chart that people could see how many comments fell into each category.
Absolutely.
So that if they want to read it, it's there.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yes, I can circulate that. So you want to see the ugly history is what you're saying?
It's been asked, well, what was it like back when? And my comment was, frankly, I would have qualified the opinion.
Yes, we've had multiple discussions about that. Which is why that auditing firm was replaced.
Yep, it's no longer. One, you'll get the comments. Two, there's a chart that was prepared that we actually used with the Board of Commissioners at one point, so they could actually see the change in the number of management letter comments that we were getting from the accounting firm. And it did lead to various projects for CARFAC. Could they work on this? Can they assist here? Etc. And sorry guys, these days that part isn't there to give us added work to do.
Yeah, you guys, all right, so I'm sending this right now. You'll get an Excel spreadsheet summarizing the comments.
Make sure you send it also to CA.
Got it.
They're on the email.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep, got it. Yeah, that's good.
For me,
So the first tab is a summary tab, and the second tab goes into detail about the nature of the comment, the category of the comment, the years it was on our list. So forth and so on. You know somebody had a 5:30 hard stop?
Oh, Jay.
Is that?
yeah, he left.
Oh.
He
right.
said
But that
goodbye.
was,
Okay.
hey, Ed, not to ask a stupid question, but was it through 2000, we did the last spot.
Correct. This will make 5 years.
We did 15 on. We did 15 on. So was the auditor the same for all those other years?
It was for 6 years prior, it was CLA.
CLA for actually 7 years.
Okay.
I think they might have done 7. And before that was McGladrey Pullen.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, because it would have been tough. It almost would have been tough to bring in a different auditor when you have that many comments. It would have been tough for us as a firm looking to propose whether or not we even wanted to bid on the job. So that's my answer. That's all.
But if you have the chart open in front of you, if you go back to 2008, material was
Right.
12, significant was 4, number of comments, and other
Right.
was 18. But the key are the material and the significant. If Jeff or Deborah, you want to comment on that? I know you don't have the comments in front of you, but to have it where it was material and then significant. I'm going to use a word that's already, that's,
It would have been.
Oh, yeah.
It would have been difficult for us as an incoming firm to kind of look at that as a job you would have wanted to do if you have that many
Yep.
issues, that many material and internal control issues. It just becomes an audit risk for us.
yeah.
In the point audit. So it becomes an audit risk for the auditors. So I understand where Ed's coming from when he says probably would have qualified it as a CPA firm in the first year or so. Yeah. But it's been a vast improvement. By the time we came in, I had been vastly improved. So, due to this group and Colfax. So, I understand. And the new man.
And the what? The new what?
Are there additional issues, or are we kind of getting ready to adjourn?
It's up to you all.
We as a firm have nothing else. So.
Any other comments,
Sure.
concerns? And with that, thank you, and we'll call it a night.
I
Motion to
move
adjourn.
to adjourn.
Second.
Approved.
Everyone, thanks for your time.
Thank you. All right, thanks. All right, thanks everybody. Have a good night. Thank you.
Thanks.
You
All right.
too.
We'll be in touch.
Thank you.